Apple is applying for the K1 visa, and they're excited for their fiance to show up because their fiance is a crap ton of Apple products coming out in the next couple months. Specifically in today's video, we're talking about all the things Apple is announcing within the next 90 days and why you should get more excited about it. Let's begin. First off, it's going to start with the proper time for iPhones to launch, which is in September. Yep, that's right. That means every single iPhone 12 that came out is probably going to get discontinued in under 12 months. But that's okay, because while these iPhones don't look terribly different, they're going to be setting some new records, and we get to finally hear Tim Cook once again say, "This is the greatest iPhone ever we've produced." That's right, we didn't make our iPhones objectively worse this year. Which, hey, I'm grateful for, because sometimes Android companies do that. So regardless, this is the first time we're going to be getting ProMotion 120Hz displays on the Pro iPhones. I'm expecting no price hikes across the lineup this year, because Apple just feels that generous. If anything, we might even get those $30 shaved off, the regular 13 and 13 mini. We get some camera rearrangements, we get some camera enhancements with the ultra-wide, the telephoto, sensor shift, image stabilization, and particularly on the 13 Pro, might be the 12S Pro, no one actually knows, so stop pretending you do. You'll have an insanely big camera bump that looks comically large, but we all have to just accept that because that's the direction smartphones are going in. Lightning port should stick around, so if you love using your old lightning cables, you'll still be able to use them. We might get some enhanced MagSafe capability and an always-on display, because if Apple can't sell you on an Apple Watch, they're just going to make sure the time is always on displaying whenever your phone is capable of holding a battery, which the good news about the batteries is that they should be the best in an iPhone ever, you know, not just in physical capacity, but the A15 chip is likely to be more power efficient, so 13 Pro Max probably gonna have the best battery life in any iPhone, even beating out the 11 Pro Max. But if you're using 5G, then say goodbye to your battery life. It's probably only gonna last about 5 minutes, so just go ahead and turn that off, thankfully, and even with 120 Hz on, I'm guessing battery life should be top notch, and the notch might even get smaller this year. I don't know why Apple decided to wait this long, but maybe they realized they didn't have enough design changes for people to find the new upgrades to be notable, so this time around they'll actually shrink the notch because they need something for you guys to notice. Alongside this September event next month, we should also be looking at the Apple Watch Series 7, which might actually feature a squared off new chassis design. That's it. No other health sensors. I know some of you are like, man, I hope the battery life gets better. You idiots. The Apple Watch has become the #1 watch in the world without having ever improving the battery life over time. Besides, when the battery health gets low and the watch becomes unusable on a daily basis, that forces you to get new Apple Watches in the future, right? If Apple made the Apple Watch battery life last 2 weeks, then you wouldn't need to upgrade for years. So, of course they're not going to improve the battery life. No, it just looks a little bit different, and maybe we'll get glucose monitoring next year, but definitely not this year. But on top of that, something else to get excited for is Apple's probably going to be updating Airpods at this event for the first time in 2.5 years. They've basically done nothing with the base model Airpods, and I'm hoping they stick with their original price of $160, even if they include wireless charging in the case. But because of inflation and Apple being Apple, I wouldn't be shocked if these things end up costing $200, looking a lot like AirPods Pro, but costing so similarly to AirPods Pro that most people just end up going, well, $50 more, I could just get AirPods Pro with active noise cancellation. And Apple will be like, yes, exactly, you should do that, go ahead. But either way, some of us don't care about active noise cancellation and would love to hear some audio quality improvements for those of us who are not spending $250 on our AirPods. And finally, a design change, because AirPods have basically remained identical since they were launched in 2016. So a design upgrade nonetheless, and also the first time Apple will probably acknowledge AirPods during a keynote with like a new design approach. You know, AirPods Pro didn't get a keynote, AirPods Max didn't get a keynote. These ones sounds like they might actually get a keynote for the first time since 2016 as well. It's been 5 years since Apple has announced AirPods on stage. That's half a decade, Apple. What the heck happened? You should be more proud of these things. I genuinely love my AirPods, so I don't know why they don't get more stage time. And why did the iPad 8 get stage time? That thing was a freaking chip upgrade. It did not deserve 10 minutes during the last September event. Oh my god. I think I'm mainly just excited because last year's September keynote was so boring and uneventful, and this one actually sounds mildly interesting. So that's what I'm excited excited for, again, iPhones being in September where they belong. But the good news is that's not the only thing happening in the next 90 days. In fact, what's probably more exciting that I could actually see a lot of you guys being more pumped for is the October event. Yes, I'm in the belief that Apple is not going to announce new MacBooks in September, but yeah, we should be expecting next generation Apple Silicon that's going to be eating away more of the Intel lineup. Yes, Apple, good. Kill off Intel as quickly as possible. This is what we need. And that results in Apple announcing the M1X chip, or maybe the M2X chip. I don't know what they're going to call it, but something with 8 high-performance cores and 2 high-efficiency cores. That's twice the high-performance cores of the regular M1 chip, which is already insanely powerful. And the power efficiency of the M1X might not be quite as good, but it should allow Apple to refresh the 16-inch MacBook Pro, giving it legacy ports back, like the SD card slot, HDMI port, and even the return of MagSafe, which I'm still really confused about. Like, is it going to be a retrofitted Type-C connector, and I'm still going to be able to charge via USB-C, or do I have to exclusively use this new MagSafe connector? Are they reusing an old MagSafe connector? I have so many questions, and I don't know what direction it's going to go, but if you care about dynamic range, they should also be introducing mini LED on these new MacBooks, which is awesome, but it comes at the cost of losing the touch bar, which most people are probably fine with, but I'm still a little sad on the inside about this one, because the touch bar always held a dear place in my heart. I always loved having it when I did, and my iMac Pro doesn't have one, but I would have gladly spent ungodly amounts of money on a Magic Keyboard with the touch bar, but I guess it's just ending up in the graveyard with 3D Touch and iTunes Ping, so that's where Apple wants to send the touch bar. But they're also going to be eliminating the 13-inch MacBook Pro with 4 USB-C ports and instead replacing it with a mini LED 14-inch MacBook Pro that will likely have the same M1X chip that we're talking about, along with the legacy ports, SD card slot, HDMI port, and MagSafe. So I could see a ton of people being interested in these MacBooks because they're doing a lot of things that Apple has been fighting against for the longest time. They're like, no, you don't need these legacy ports. No, you don't need MagSafe, and that's what people have been asking for so long. Now they're making the switch to Apple Silicon, and they're like, okay, well, let's somehow make it look like Intel was forcing us to have no port options and forcing us to use the touch bar. But now that we're designing the inside and we're making our own silicon, we're going to suddenly start listening to everyone's requests and give them exactly what they want with the legacy ports and no touch bar and the mini LED display. It's not a causation that the MacBooks are getting way better when they switch to Apple Silicon, but there is a correlation somewhere in there, aside, of course, from the performance, which is rumored to be much better with the M1X chip. The graphics performance is supposed to be 2 to 4 times better than the M1 chip, depending on if they end up settling with a 16-core GPU or a 32-core GPU. My personal guess is that they're going to give the 16-inch MacBook Pro a 32-core GPU and the 14-inch MacBook Pro a 16-core, so that you still get a bit of a graphics boost if you buy the bigger model. But battery life on these things should be insane, because they already have like barely legal batteries on the inside, and Apple Silicon is going to be way more power efficient. So if you're using the 16-inch MacBook Pro for basic tasks, wouldn't be shocked if the battery life exceeds 24 hours or something really, really high like that. But there's also a decent chance of Apple introducing an M1X Mac Mini, which I'm super duper excited for, because MacBooks are cool and they're great for mobility, but with more people working from home, there's likely a few more reasons for people to have just a desk setup, and I'm imagining the M1X chip to be insanely powerful for the value that it's offered at. So if there's a way to buy the M1X chip and you can just provide your own monitor, keyboard, and mouse and everything, that performance is gonna be killer and pretty much unbeatable in the desktop market. So I really, really hope those rumors end up being true, and they bring some I/O back for that one. I mean, the Mac Mini already has HDMI and it doesn't have an SD card slot, but I would appreciate having 4 Thunderbolt ports on the back, because that's what the old Mac Minis had. M1 chip is really powerful and really great, but they still restrict 2 Thunderbolt ports across every Mac that the M1 is in, and that bugs me because I do actually plan on using more than 2 Thunderbolt ports. So there's a whole lot of crap coming out in the next 90 days, and there's even some things I could be missing. Like, we don't know exactly when the iPad Mini 6 is supposed to come out. They might reserve that for the October event because it's a bit more catered towards the pros instead of just the average consumer stuff like the iPhone. And I know that Apple doesn't like releasing too many things at once because they want all of their products to have adequate press coverage, and they don't want the MacBooks and the iPhones competing with stage time with each other. So I wouldn't be shocked if the iPad Mini 6 gets pushed till October, but because it's supposed to be more affordable and catered towards everyday iPad users, which honestly is all iPad users. Maybe they could launch it alongside the next iPhone, and then that iPad is getting USB-C, it's getting Touch ID and the power button, all in on gesture control, probably Apple Pencil 2 compatibility, and possibly even a smart connector, but I would be shocked if that ends up being true. Overall though, I'm basically talking about within the next 90 days, Apple's going to be updating a ton of their Mac line, their iPhone line, the Apple Watch line, the AirPod line, possibly even the iPad line. Pretty much the whole ecosystem is getting shook up in the next couple months, so that's what I'm excited for. I hope you guys are too. If you don't believe what I've said in today's video is true, check out the Eurasian database. They've seen registered filings for updated Apple Watches and updated MacBooks that have not launched yet, so this is pretty much always what happens before a release. Sounds like a lot of this stuff is going to end up being real, and absolutely let me know what you guys think is most exciting within the next 90 days. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.